Hello, everybody. Welcome to Do Nothing Project. Now, do not adjust your screens. I know the quality is completely crap. That's because I'm in Costa Rica, and we just did a sound check earlier, and apparently the video bandwidth is terrible. So I apologize for that. On the good side, you can think of it as we're improving the very low quality of nothingness that we do in this broadcast here. So it's true we do very little, and now I'm trying to do even less. The idea is that each week, less and less will happen. The quality will degrade more and more until eventually we'll all disappear into a singularity or something like that. Anyway, I hope you guys can see me. I know it's pixelated or whatever. And ironically, because the video quality is so bad, I thought I would talk about clarity today. I thought that would be, we'll do a kind of meditation on that theme. But good to see everybody. Just checking in here. Exeter, sweet. All right. We got Ohio. We've got Colorado. Oh, Exeter, Ontario. All right. Tristan's here. Hey, Tristan from Colorado. Jeff McPee's somewhere in America. We got Montreal. We got Lauren here, Florida. Hey, Lauren. Chapel Hill is in the house. And Amy from Maryland waving to Lisa. Carlos, how are you? Jeff McPee and Lisa. Anyway, good to see everybody. I can't even scroll all the way up. Wow, our numbers are growing. Wisconsin, nice. Washington. Anyway, very happy you're here, Boston. So I just arrived down in Costa Rica like 2 days ago, Sarah and Eden and I'm starting I do a residency here every year. Super sweet, like the best thing ever that happened to me. Where basically I teach a couple days a week at this hotel called the Harmony Hotel. So on Wednesday mornings and Friday mornings, it's going to be this week from like 7 a.m. So if you're in Costa Rica, I'm in Nasara. I just do a little teaching thing here, and in return, they kind of like, hook us up to stay here, and they help us figure out how to stay here. So I'll be here until mid-March. And then that's when the retreat, I'm doing a retreat down in southern Costa Rica for a week. But so I'm hoping next week I might have to move. I'll try to move to my phone, see if the video has better quality. But we might be screwed. But I'll have to see what I can do. I mean, I didn't really know where I'd be staying. We're just in this sort of random casita. So what I thought I would do over the next month is do a little episode on each of the 4 skills that I kind of see as being central to the endeavor of meditation. And so today I thought we'd explore clarity. Next week, we explore these all the time, but just being a little bit more deliberate, elaborating a bit on them. Next week, I thought I'd talk a little bit about more about concentration, in particular, some of the depth dimension of concentration. Then do a thing on equanimity, no surprise, and then the thing on care. Maybe I'll leave equanimity to last. And then just another announcement before we get going. I don't know if any of you guys are on the 10% Happier app. I know I do stuff about 10% Happier and Calm. Well, 10% Happier are about to do this big meditation challenge starting tomorrow. And it's a great kind of goad or prompt to meditate. I think the idea is to try to do 21 days straight. So I'm going to try to do it. I mean, I'm always missing days and sometimes missing weeks. But I'm going to try to basically do it on the regular. And if you're on 10% Happier, you can actually friend me. I think there's a way to like invite a friend. Lily knows about it. My manager, maybe she'll post it on this but basically you can you can kind of sit with each other, sort of like we're doing here, but not live, but you sort of see when your friends are meditating and who's doing what. And so I just thought I'd say that if you feel like you want a challenge and try to get 21 days in and you've got that app. Oh yeah. Even if you don't have the app, it's free. They've got it organized. So it doesn't matter who you are. You can just do it and then bail after. So thought I'd mention that. So clarity. Clarity is one of the big skills of practice. I guess there's a lot to say about this, and there's a lot of ways in which it gets overcomplicated. I think, to be honest, the basics of clarity is just being aware of something. Are you aware of what's going on? And in certain practices, they put a real premium on clarity because they're trying to get you to ratchet up like how intense and like how vivid the sensory world is for you, and then ultimately how vivid the properties of consciousness itself are, the characteristics of consciousness are. So when you're working within a Vipassana tradition, say within Buddhism or an insight tradition, there's a lot of emphasis on noticing when things are starting and noticing when things are ending, on getting really clear about the particulate matter of sensory experience, like the kind of vibratory quality of it, or getting ratcheting up the resolution on sounds and sights and feelings. And that's all great. And it's an entire path that leads into basically learning how to kind of see the impermanence of things, the no self stuff, the what they call 3 characteristics. So this is a whole way into deepening your practice. I love this way. Ultimately, I realized it wasn't kind of my main way, because there's other paths that are also about being aware, getting clear, but they're not necessarily about being aware of the content of consciousness. So there's a whole path that for me has become much more important, which is just becoming more and more aware and more clear about the silence in my experience, or the quiet, the stillness. That quality is sort of begins to bubble up when we meditate. That's a real thing for me that I've become really interested in. You can develop clarity around that. And another thing you can get clear about, and that's a whole path that we call almost the path of concentration, although, yeah, there's different ways to talk about that, but you can talk about it as a path of kind of stillness. It's just being silent and noticing the quiet. And as the more you do it, the quiet gets richer and fuller. And another thing that you can become more aware about, that you can kind of use your clarity on, is awareness itself. Some people like to do that, like to just notice when they're aware, the quality of their awareness, and just the kind of emptiness of an awareness itself. And you get clear and clear about noticing that, about noticing when you're really aware or when you're kind of like less aware, that kind of the rise and that expansion and contraction of awareness itself. So and you can kind of do all 3 of those as a mix, but those are kind of the directions clarity goes. The other thing to say about clarity is, so I'll lead a practice that's basically around, what are you aware of? Do you feel like getting really clear about the kind of like, the kind of pixelated qualities of sensations and sounds, like kind of bee pollinating a flower, kind of going in and really feeling into that, which is a sweet direction to go. And maybe you start there, and then maybe you shift into, or maybe you start with trying to be aware of what's quiet in your experience. Where is there stillness? And can you slow everything down and kind of begin to move into that still place, getting clear and clear about its presence in your experience. And then there may be just being clear about your awareness itself, like the fact that you're aware, but also this thing of like, because there's sort of a continuum between being aware and being present, and then kind of being distracted. And we often talk about in a practice, it's like, oh, are you aware or are you distracted? But really, it's more like a continuum, because there's being really aware, being really distracted, then there's sort of being in the middle somewhere, where you're kind of aware, but you're kind of also a little bit half distracted. You've kind of half thinking about this thing, but you're half kind of meditating. I don't know if that sounds familiar to people, but this thing about being kind of, that's rarely talked about for some reason with meditation teachers, but that's more like the human experience, You're kind of, so it's good to kind of notice that. It's almost like we're developing kind of a meta awareness around knowing where you're at. Oh, today's a day where I've got a lot of distraction. Today's a day where I'm kind of in the middle. Today's a day where I'm actually really quite clear and I can notice my awareness. So, and that is one of the important things, like regardless of which direction you're going in, if you want to get pixelated, if you want to start noticing stillness, if you want to just be noticing awareness, it is very valuable to be clear when you're present and when you're not present, and what takes you away. It's like, oh yeah, I'm off in this pattern again. We all got our greatest hits. So certain patterns that are familiar to us, that are kind of our go-to. So some people, it's going into fantasy. For some people, it's dwelling on the past. For some, it's more worrying, am I doing it right? Or like an inner critic going on, or the list maker. Well, these are all the things I got to do later. These are all the things I got to do later. So it's good to get clear about what your greatest hits are, like what the things are that take you away. That way you can be faster at noticing when you're in the pattern and come back to whatever you're paying attention to in the present, whether it's awareness, just being, or you're paying attention to a sensation. So that's a lot of information about clarity. In a way, clarity is sort of like the most complicated of the ones. Care is so simple. Equanimity is so simple that it's almost impossible to figure out. Concentration is also fairly simple. It has some other little dimensions and levers to it. But thought I'd start with clarity since our picture, I'm assuming, is terrible. I'm glad I'm glad it was helpful, Faith. So I'll give you a little bit of orientation. So why don't we do a guided practice here? And then at the end, I'll see, I think there's some comments here. I'll see if there's any questions or whatever around that. And then next week, we'll do concentration. So I also forgot my bell. So we're going to just start with no bell. I'm going to thwack this drink dolly against this wood bench because that's how they used to do it. So we'll do 25 minutes. It's now 7:12 for me. For a lot of you guys, 8:12. But so we'll go until 37 past the hour. Wow, this is super bad. Okay. Humanity's bow. Let's do this. Okay, so as always with this group community sit, if you got your own go-to practice you like to do, your own technique, you're obviously more than welcome. It's just good to be in company with you. If you want to follow along with some loose guidance, I'll offer some orientation. I like to start with a few deep breaths. So I breathe in, sort of stretching up the spine, finding that alertness, that kind of like, almost like a dignity in the posture, like, oh yeah, okay, here I am. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to take myself seriously in this, like not too seriously, but sort of a self-respecting uprightness. And then the exhale is the softening. So the spine is straight, but as you breathe out, you're relaxing the worry lines in your forehead and softening the jaw and the shoulders. The idea is with every exhale, see if you can breathe out any tension, softening, but not compromising the integrity of the spine. And it's good at the beginning to connect to that sort of dignified nature of the posture. I think that goes hand in hand with this equanimity muscle, which is this commitment. Yeah, I'm going to be mature and respecting to myself. I'm not going to freak out if things are going bad, or if I've got this pain or these thoughts. I'm just going to recognize that's where I am and have this accepting attitude. And setting that at the beginning of a practice can be really helpful. And it helps us really settle into it. Okay, so our theme this evening is clarity. We talked about a few different things you can get clear about. The most basic is just choosing a sensation, whether it's the feeling of the breath, warmth in the hands, say, point in the body. It could also be sounds, like a fan in the background. You could just sit and listen to. And sending your awareness into a sound or a sensation, kind of choosing a direction and just seeing if you can be aware of some of the particulate matter, some of the edges of things, the texture of the content of what's happening for you. And you're not doing this in a strainy way, kind of relaxed way, like, oh yeah, can I just feel that a little bit more? Can I hear a little more precisely? A lot of us will start there. I'll have a continuum here as I guide, but I'll just say also, in case that's not an interesting direction for you, another two things you can be clear about are just your own awareness. If that kind of, some people really that grabs them, some people not so much. And the other one is being aware of any stillness or quiet or spaciousness in your experience. And that usually develops a little bit more within after you've sat for 10 or 15 minutes. So those are some options, and I'll come back in a little bit. Okay, good. So we're really exploring this idea of clarity, this theme, this skill that we develop. It just means staying aware in a particular direction, aware of maybe of a particular sensation or sound, just staying with it. Mind wanders, you come back. And maybe it's what's being aware of what's between the sounds, between the thoughts, between the sensations, or within the sensations, or kind of quiet or stillness that can kind of start to appear. Maybe you're just more aware of just being, the feeling of being, your awareness. Either of those. Let's stay aware in a relaxed and easygoing way. And so we're exploring clarity here, staying aware, and just noticing. Part of clarity is noticing what you get distracted by. If you get distracted, the kinds of themes, the patterns, the usual rackets. Kind of going, oh yeah, this is my thing. I always do this. Noticing that, popping out of the trance, coming back to being more aware, more clear of whatever the thing you're paying attention to. And noticing if you get uptight about that, you're like, oh. Or if you're like, oh yeah, it's just part of how it goes, because it is part of how it goes. And you might be having a meditation where you're feeling very aware and clear, or you might be having one where you're feeling muddy, and that's normal too. Always an up and down within a sit and within the weeks and months. And just accepting that, so you can even be clear about that, and then coming back to whatever you've been paying attention to. So much of this practice is about just enjoying the simplicity of what we're doing. This opportunity to be with yourself. It's not exotic, just aware, open, present. Okay, good. So the last couple of minutes here, we'll just finish with a little mini loving kindness type practice. A really basic one is just what I like to do, kind of a default. It's just think about somebody I like, or just whatever, even someone randomly coming into my mind's eye, and I imagine them happy, smiling, laughing, and I try to be clear about what that does to me, what the feeling of that is. Sort of like I'm wishing them well, but it's the feeling of enjoying their happiness, or just visualizing it and picturing it and being clear what that's like for you. For everyone's a bit different. It could be like feels really warm. Could be that you just feel very present, very calm, or maybe that doing this exercise is a kind of slight bitter sweetness in it, which is the beautiful feeling, actually, this sort of feeling of humanness, poignancy. I just think you can be clear about when you deliberately someone in your mind's eye like this, or it could just be the idea of somebody, about them being happy. I'm not trying to fix them or change them, just imagine them as they are. What's that experience like? You can do a few different people. Animals are good. Babies, excellent. Puppies, excellent. Okay. Here's our bell. Humanity's bow. Good to meet here with you guys. And if you're wondering who this mysterious, beautiful lady is, it's my wife, Sarah. And it was a nice practice. How was that for you, sweetie? That's good. What was the experience like?
I sent a lot of love out, a lot of compassion to the people I know I'm suffering. I had a relative pass away recently, so I was doing that. And then I was actually fighting to stay clear because I'm going to sleep last night and I can feel myself coming off. So clarity.
Yeah, clarity's hard when you're sleep deprived. I was fighting that one too. Yeah, for me it was like first kind of distracted, but already feeling really present, and then just kind of deepened by the last 10 minutes, just feeling really, the thing I was most noticing, I was most clear about, was the being feeling, which is kind of my go-to. Just a strong feeling of just existing. My only talent. And guess what? We're all equally talented at existing. That's why I love there's no hierarchies from that perspective. So I hope that was a good sit for you guys. Glad it was just what you needed, Lauren. Yeah, Allison. Now I was going to see. Oh, Andrew says the video was better. Okay, cool. I'm glad that was helpful for the clarity piece, Faith. So if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to try to answer something now particularly about clarity around that or experience. Here we go. I started experiencing in the middle of meditation some negative presence, so I decided to take distance and let it be. I still felt it. What does it mean? What does it mean? Well, kind of hard to say. It could be a kind of memory of something, that has a kind of creates a contracted feeling in you. I would have to get more information about that. But in a way, it's the same advice regardless of what's happening. Like at any time, you can kind of choose how to direct your attention. It's one of the kind of basic freedoms. So if that's happening, you can choose to direct away from it and just to something else, and it may just clear itself. Hopefully that's helpful. Yeah, okay. Black felt. Nice, Barbara. I connect to that too. A little rougher than usual. Yeah, can happen. Thanks, Tar. Tar Heel fan. Okay, so Janet said, I started to get my act together after you said to notice things that distracted. Yeah, so that's a really good trick, actually. That's a trick that Kuladasa talks about. His great teacher. He says, one of the things to do at the beginning of a sit is just to kind of like do a little check in with a kind of inventory. What are the usual things that distract me? Knowing what those are. Like, oh yeah, I'm the kind of thing that I always get distracted by is this, or I'm always getting into wondering, how is this working? Am I doing this right? Or whatever your go-to is. And so you kind of know it, you kind of think about that ahead of time, and that kind of primes you to be clear about it when it's happening. So you're not lost and you're like, oh yeah, this is the thing I thought would happen. That's happening, and you can come back. Let's see. Jeff McPS, what's the next step after being equanimous with shit? That's a lifelong practice. There is no other step. It's like one long step to do that. Your entire life is the one long step to become more equanimous with stuff. So it's just a practice. It just builds. And there's a lot of traditions. It's really all about that. But I mean, different paths. We'll talk about different kinds of things you might want to have happen, or different stages, or different things you're trying to get to. But really, everyone's trying to get to the same thing, which is right here. Here in a bigger, more open way. Here, realizing that there's more to be grateful for than you realize. Here, feeling more connected to people, feeling part of the whole. That's whatever you want to call it, whatever your language is. I mean, that's the kind of, they all go that direction. It's super not complicated, but infinitely complicated as well. Any other thing? Not so clear, says Heidi, but it'll come. Yeah, it comes and it goes, and it comes and goes. It's a lot also about knowing what you want to be clear about. Like there was a time when I was really interested in being super clear about the the kind of granularity of all these sensations. I thought that was super important because I thought that was the way I was going to get liberated. And now, after a while, I just was like, oh yeah, that's just one path. And it's cool, but I'm glad I went down it. But I'm more interested in being clear about what's already here. And that's a different thing to be clear about. So it's just kind of noticing what's emerging in your nervous system as a direction that feels good, that feels right. That's kind of like what this practice is partly about, or maybe all about. Is clarity, Marston's asking, is clarity equal intensive labeling? So clarity is, labeling is one way to increase sensory clarity. So when I talk about the granularity of things, that's sensory clarity. That's being clear about the vibratory of frequencies and sounds. It's feeling your breath and noticing the silkiness of the edges, and then where it gets slightly caught. It's noticing the edges of a throbbing discomfort here, and the different patterns in it. So that's all sensory clarity. And so within a Vipassana practice, we develop sensory clarity. One of the ways that helps is just to help stay on track is just saying feeling or breathing. And then, you wait a few moments and then breathing. So labeling does absolutely increase sensory clarity. What else we got here? Oh, cool. Allison's saying, I felt clarity on what I needed to do. Animal rights are so important to me. Great point. So another dimension of clarity is getting clear about what we're about, what's important to us, clear on our values, clear about the practices that work for us, all these other things outside of meditation that also are about being clear about what life is trying to show us right now. That's a big one. Like, not when you're meditating, you're walking around and something's happening and it's sort of like, what is the learning here? That's a whole kind of clarity. So there's clarity in all directions. It's because we're talking about awareness. There's so much to be aware of. Just don't get stressed out about trying to be aware of all of it. To get some real progress, how long should you meditate for a day? That's from Richard. That's a good question, Richard. It sort of depends on the person as well. Like, I think it's more important to meditate regularly than to meditate for longer. So in other words, trying to meditate every day is more important than meditating once a week for an hour. Like, I'd rather meditate 10 minutes a day for 7 days a week than just one big hour chunk, because then you're really getting your nervous system is getting the taste of that. But in terms of a length, it's sort of like, when do you feel like it kind of clicks in? It may never, some days it doesn't ever click in, but there's sort of some people will say, oh yeah, kind of 5 or 10 minutes or 15 minutes or 20 minutes is when I feel like something kind of lands. But it's going to depend on your schedule. Like, Dan and I always talk about, it's like 2 minutes is fine, 5 minutes is fine, 1 minute is fine, in terms of just like to give you a taste of, coming back to sanity. But there's often a threshold where you feel like you kind of just drop in a little bit after usually around a 15 or 20 minutes mark. But, people can share what they think. So you're saying 10 to 15 minutes is when it locks. So that's great. I would say doing I think 20 minutes is 20 minutes, half an hour is a good practice a day. And you'll make progress just practicing every day. It's inevitable that the silence, the qualities that are being developed will start to move out. It's just a numbers game of how much you just, so it's, some traditions you just work really, really hard and you do these really intense sits and you can accelerate certain kinds of things, but that also has a flip side to it too. So I think main thing is just practicing every day. We'll do one last question, then we're going to pull it out here because I haven't slept a lot. Okay, could you elaborate on clarity of awareness? When I focus on being aware that I'm being aware, it seems more like I'm thinking. So that's a good question. That's very common. It's sort of a thing you start to get the hang of more. For some people, right away, it feels pretty straightforward. I'm just being aware that I'm aware, and it's not a problem. But for some people, you get into this weird kind of like tick, 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 tick thing where you're like, oh, I'm being aware of aware, but am I thinking about I'm being aware? Am I thinking about being aware? And you can kind of get into this whole, it kind of trips you up. So what I would say with that is just be patient with it, but it's more of a resting back. It's more like I'm aware. It's not like you're going out to find it. If you're aware that you're thinking, you're aware that you're thinking. If you're aware that you're sitting here, you're aware that you're sitting here. Awareness is always there. So it's sort of just resting back and just having confidence that it's already here. And then just sort of being inside the awareness. I don't know if that makes sense. Andrew's saying frequency over duration. Okay, so that was a lot of questions. I haven't answered that many questions in a long time. Good to hang out with you guys. It's 7:51 right now. I'm going to close it out. We're going to go to sleep. I will be back next week and we'll explore concentration. Very happy to have this community. Take care, guys.